Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm pulling back the curtain on my favorite iPad note-taking ideas, the apps I use, how I organize everything, and a few little systems that changed the way I study. Quick disclaimer before we start, though note-taking is not a requirement for language learning. If it doesn't work for you, don't force it. But if you're someone who loves to take notes and wants to make them effective rather than just pretty, stick around, this one's for you. So let me walk you through the language apps I use. I have a few and they each serve a different purpose. I don't think one app does everything perfectly, so I cannot pick and choose. First, SuperChinese. This is what I use for structured learning. It's kind of like a digital textbook. It guides you through vocabulary, sentence patterns, and builds your foundation step by step. Then there's Pingo AI, which I love for speaking practice. It lets you have AI conversations, so you can practice responding in Chinese. DuChinese is where I go for reading, real content, articles, stories with built-in support, so you're not completely lost. It's that bridge between studying and consuming a language. And Pleco, it's technically a dictionary, but it does everything: flashcards, handwriting recognition, audio. For Korean, I started with Write Korean, and I think this is the best place to begin. Hangul looks intimidating at first, but it's actually super logical, and writing it out really helps build muscle memory. For vocabulary, I use Quizlet. I know it feels very school-like, but if you find or make a good deck, it's just fast and effective. For reading, I used LingQ. You can import content, track unknown words, and really build long-term progress. For kanji, I mainly use MochiKanji. When I was at a beginner level, I used Write Japanese for stroke order practice. I use Todaii Japanese for reading. You can read real news articles, adjust to difficulty, and get full Ghana support. For quick lookups, I use Shirabe Jishou. It's not just a dictionary. You can browse vocabulary and kanji organized by GLPD level. It also has a built-in flashcard system, so you can save words directly from your lookup and start drilling them straight away. This is where my approach becomes a bit more personal. I use LingQ for structured reading and vocabulary tracking, but what helped me the most is a podcast called You Too Can Learn Thai. It comes with transcripts, so I listen and read at the same time, which is incredibly helpful for Thai because of tones and lack of spaces between words. For writing the script, you can try Write It Thai. Now, let me walk you through the note-taking apps I use day to day. On my iPad, my main app is GoodNotes. This is where my structured study notes live. I have a separate notebook for each language, and inside each one, I have clear sections: resources, notes, script credits, and my phone in the while section, which I'll explain later. I also would like to talk about Notesplats because I've been obsessed with it lately. It's currently free. There's a nice range of pen types, and it has a built-in flashcard generator, so your vocabulary review is right there in the same app as your notes. But the feature I use most is the YouTube player. I can watch a video in my target language and take notes in the same app at the same time. Android users can use NoteShelf or KiloNotes. I also use these apps on my old tablet. They are very simple and easy to use. In KiloNotes, you can now watch a video and take notes in the same app at the same time. Now, let's talk about pen settings. In GoodNotes, I use the fountain pen tool. Tip size set to 0.4mm in the app and pressure sensitivity at 50%, sharpness at 50%. Using the fine tip keeps my strokes sharp and precise, which is exactly what I need when I'm writing characters with a lot of detail, like kanji or hanzi. If your tip size is too thick in the app, your strokes just bleed into each other and everything looks messy. And then on the physical side, I've replaced the original stylus tip with a 4mm nib because the sharp tip makes my handwriting more precise and more natural in my hand, and for longer study sections, it's just way more comfortable to write with. Personally, I prefer writing with an S Pen with 3mm tip size for Chinese characters and kanji, especially because of the fine tip and almost zero lag. My handwriting is noticeably neater with it, and I feel so much more in control of each stroke. Before I get into the techniques themselves, I want to quickly talk about something else that's become part of my study setup, and that's my keyboard. So recently, I've been using the new VA100 V3 keyboard with my iPad, and it's made a really big difference in how I study. What I really like about the new VA V3 lineup is that there are different sizes depending on your setup. A65 V3 is super compact, great if you want something minimal and portable. A75 V3 is kind of the barest option. And A100 V3 is the full-size one with a numpad, which is the one I'm using. The A100 V3 is a wireless 100% layout, compact enough to sit right next to my iPad or laptop without it feeling crowded. The switches I have are the Blush Nano, which is the silent one, so it's smooth and quiet to type on, especially if you're studying in a shared space or library. And since it connects easily to multiple devices, I can switch between my iPad and laptop without any hassle. I usually use it when I want to practice typing in my target languages, especially when I'm chatting with native friends. If you're interested, check out the link in my description. You can also get $10 off for your order. So yeah, it's been a nice addition to my study setup lately. Okay, so apps are one thing, but how do I organize my notes? On my iPad, my main app is GoodNotes, and my setup is pretty simple. I just have 4 folders, one for each language, and inside each one, I keep the same structure. A textbook folder that is purely for storing my PDF textbooks, so I have everything in one place. A found in a while section for anything I pick up naturally from dramas, social media, songs, and real life. A resources section for anything reference based I want to keep handy, grammar charts, cheat sheets, alphabet guides, that kind of thing. And my notes section, which is my free personal space for notes from textbooks or lectures. I also have a characters and script practice section. This is just page after page of writing practice. I love writing down some short paragraphs from books, social media, or news articles. This section is almost meditative for me, honestly. And the last section is listening and reading notes. When I'm watching something in one of the languages or reading a transcript, like my YouTube content type podcast transcripts, and something clicks or something confuses me, I write it here. It's the messiest section, but sometimes the most useful. The key thing that makes this work is consistency. Every new thing I learn goes into the right section in the right notebook immediately. If I tell myself I'll organize it later, I won't, so I do it in a moment. Now let's move on to note-taking tips. The first one is the character practice. This is for beginners. Create a dedicated page for each character you're learning. At the top, write the character large, like really large. Then create practice boxes with step-by-step stroke order or use ready-made worksheets where you write the character repeatedly. For Chinese and Japanese, use square grids with center lines. For Korean, create templates with the baseline and guidelines for proper Hangul proportions. Make multiple versions, large grids for learning new characters, small grids for speed practice, and tiny grids for testing yourself. Then break down the character into its radicals or components. Write each radical separately and make these pages visually distinct with colors and borders. The water radical, make everything blue. The fire radical, orange and red. The tree radical, green. Your brain will start associating these visual cues with meanings, making character recognition so much faster. Add the pronunciation, pinyin for Chinese, hiragana for Japanese, and don't forget example words or sentences using that character. The second tip is sentence mining with split screen. This technique uses one of the iPad's best features, split screen multitasking. Open your note-taking app on one side and Safari or your language learning app on the other. As you are reading articles, watching shows with subtitles, or going through your textbook, you capture full sentences that contain new words rather than isolated vocabulary. Write the sentence in the target language, then write your translation underneath. Circle or highlight the new word or grammar pattern you're focusing on. Another tip, especially if you don't like using separate flashcard apps, is to turn your notes into flashcards. Instead of switching apps, I just create simple text boxes or tables right inside my notes. On one side, I write the word, and on the other side, the meaning or translation. Then, whenever I want to review, I just cover one side and test myself. Go through the whole page in one direction, then flip it and go the other way. What I like about this is that it's super low effort. Every time I finish writing vocab notes, I can immediately review them without needing to transfer anything into another app. It's simple, but it makes reviewing feel more natural and part of the learning process instead of a separate task. This is my favorite section in every notebook, and I think it's one of the most underrated note-taking habits for language learners. In each language notebook, I keep a section just for the language I encountered naturally, not from a textbook, not from a lesson, from a drama, a song, a social media post, a menu, a street sign in a photo. When I come across something interesting like idioms or codes, I note them down. The phrase, where I found it, what it means, and sometimes a little note about the context. This session teaches me more about how a language sounds and feels than almost anything else. Textbook language is clean and controlled. Real language is messy and interesting, and this is where you find it. And the last one is try different methods. If you're not sure what structure works for you, here are a few methods worth trying on your iPad. They all work well digitally. The Cornell method divides your page into two columns with a summary section at the bottom. For language learning, this is brilliant. Script or vocabulary on the left, translation and reading on the right, grammar rules at the bottom. Really clean for Chinese or Japanese, where you are managing the character, pronunciation, and the meaning all at once. The outline method organizes notes in a hierarchy. Main topic, subtopics, details underneath. Good for grammar lessons where you have a rule and then a set of exceptions and examples underneath it. The mapping method is visual. You draw a central idea and branch outward to connect related vocabulary, grammar, and examples. Really useful for building vocabulary networks around a theme like food, travel, or emotions. The charting or grid method uses tables. This is what I use for my verb and grammar grids. Aspect markers down one side, pronouns across the top, and you fill in a structure for each new word you learn. Completely reusable as a template and really satisfying to fill in. Most of the note-taking apps let you set up template pages that you can duplicate endlessly. So once you build a corner layout or a vocabulary grid you like, you never have to recreate it from scratch. I think the most important thing is that your setup should make you want to sit down and study. If your notes feel like a chore to look at, you won't look at them. So spend a little time making them yours. Whether that's cute stickers in GoodNotes, a really satisfying font, or just a system that feels like you. Pick one or two of these methods that excite you and start there. Build your system gradually. And remember, consistency beats perfection. If this was helpful, smash the like button and subscribe for more language learning tips. Let me know in the comments which language you're learning and which method you are using or going to try first. See you in my next video.